Someone just commented on a video, said I looked like an extremely gay Ed Kemper. I wouldn't say extremely. From time to time, I read a book. This year was, frankly, abysmal for my book reading. I think I completed like 20 books. Currently reading Game of Thrones. You can go see my vlogs on the Patreon. Not like I'm plugging it or anything. But, I have a very good excuse. We just had our child. My son, he's amazing in the light of my life. Just perfect. But eating into my reading time, so... All right, let's get serious now. A lot of people do their least favorite books of the year. I don't have enough least favorite books. I never really finish books that I don't like. Except there's one book that I really didn't like. The first Sally Rooney book, Beautiful World, Where Are You? It's the first one I've read of hers. I listened to it on audiobook while painting the nursery. Maybe that had an effect on it. Was just, I thought the characters were really dull. And I didn't find them very compelling. They all felt very flat and too similar. But a lot of people really enjoy her work, so I don't know. So from least to most favorite read of the year, I'm going to start with Larry McMurtry, All My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers. What a title. First off, that's a great title. Larry McMurtry, beloved Texan author, passed away not too long ago, wrote famously Lonesome Dove, not to be confused with Cormac McCarthy, very, very different writers. Cormac McCarthy is kind of cold and austere. Larry McMurtry is very warm and conversational. All My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers is, I think, a great entry point for McMurtry readers. It's very semi-autobiographical, I imagine. I mean, it's about a writer adventure, the story of a young writer running in and out of relationships. It is funny. There are some hilarious scenes, poorly dated scenes, but I mean, that's part of the charm, honestly, with books like this. This came out in the 60s, I think. Really memorable scenes that I think about from time to time. It's like a friend telling you a story. If you want to dip your toes into Larry McMurtry writing about his contemporary Texas rather than like his Westerns, this would be a great spot. Part of his like Houston series, which involves multiple characters. Moving On is another one. Terms of Endearment, these characters overlap. So he had kind of this fixation on these characters. And I mean, it's really good. I've talked about it before. Just next up, the reason why all these books are short, and I read a lot of mysteries, but there's some variety in this list, I won't lie. But the reason why I tend to read short books is because it's just easier to get through them. Like, I've been reading In Search of Lost Time, but I'm not going to talk about it because I can't talk about it until I finish it. And I spent a lot of time reading other books. That's what I'm saying. John D. MacDonald, Soft Touch. Perhaps my favorite John D. MacDonald, and I've read maybe 10 of his books. He was a prolific mystery writer, wrote tons of standalone paperbacks like this in the 50s and 60s before making it big with his Travis McGee series, which I'm not as big of a fan of. This is a heist gone wrong story. Really despicable characters, but fun to read about. Great action. Your classic noir in the vein of James M. Cain. I mean, if you love a good mystery, a good like feel bad kind of mystery, read some pulp novels from John D. MacDonald. This one is like top of the heap, one of the best ones for sure. It made me feel gross in a good way. Next up on the list, I have been exploring the mysteries of Ross MacDonald. What's with the MacDonalds? Funny, actually, Ross MacDonald and John D. MacDonald, they had a bit of a beef over their name because Ross MacDonald was actually Kenneth Millar, but he changed his name to Ross. He changed his name to like John Ross MacDonald. And John D. MacDonald was like, can you make your name something else? We write in the same genre. Can you not? I can't blame him. And then he changed his name to Ross MacDonald. And John D. MacDonald was like, still like, anyways, I feel like he carried on the tradition of the private eye detective stories from Raymond Chandler. And he brought them into the 60s and 70s. I actually like his stories better. I read, and also his earlier novels are way more similar to Raymond Chandler stories than his later novels, which became more of himself. Great writer, great prose writer, just really could write a sentence. But I suggest diving into one of his middle novels or later novels, because the early novels are just a lot more formulaic. Many consider his masterpiece to be The Galton Case, which I read in this old omnibus of like 3 books. The Galton Case is a tragedy. It's like a massive operatic family tragedy spanning generations, but seen through the lens of, the private eye. I started to realize what is so special ultimately about these detective stories, because Archer as a character is like nobody. You know, he's just the lens through which we experience and investigate this massive story. And there's so many great characters in this book. It's just so much is condensed. It's almost like a poem in the way it's so tightly packed, these layers and layers. And by the time I ended the story, still unraveling it in my head, darkly powerful. And from what I understand now that Ross MacDonald does that, from what I've read, he was like Raymond Chandler, but good with a plot. I really recommend checking out Ross MacDonald, and I think the Galton Case would be kind of perfect. So the next book on my favorite books of the year list, I kind of hated. Like, I didn't enjoy the process of reading it for most of it until I got to the end when it kind of cracked open for me, and I have a strong appreciation for it, and I think about it a lot. That book is No Longer Human. It's kind of like the incel book, the portrait of a young man who comes from wealth and privilege and squanders it because he has mental health problems. At the time, they aren't like described that way. He has all sorts of problems, but really he has this deep loathing, just an unbearable self-loathing, which reading this book, it's like his diary. Oh my God, it is insufferable because he is genuinely bad. Like, he's a bad person, objectifies women. He treats people like objects. Like, he's very much like pity me. But also part of why he hates himself is because he's like that. So it's like this self-fulfilling cycle, which as a portrait of like a person who's extremely in a dark place, very well done. Hard to sit with that throughout most of the book. And part of me was wondering, how much is the author sympathizing with this character? How much is the author aware of this character's cycle? But by the end of the story, there's, I think, an epilogue or the frame narrative where we get outside of our character's POV. We get someone who knows and observes him. And it's so tragic and really ties the whole thing together that it made me reassess the entire book in a new light. It really just changed everything for me, how I interpreted and thought about it. So basically, I think that some people could read into this book kind of like incel fantasy, might romanticize it, and then there's people who hopefully see it for what it is, as a kind of very self-aware work of literature. Anyways, check it out if you're in the right frame of mind for this. Finally, my absolute favorite read of this year, no contest, even though I had seen the movie already and loved the movie. This book is just, my God, you see why it has its reputation. You guys know I like Larry McMurtry. The Last Picture Show. He wrote this pretty early in his career, and I think that he just compressed and packed in like his entire life, all his knowledge, everything into this book. This is a messed up book. Probably doesn't sound like a super daring or scandalous book, but I see why the people in his hometown chased him away and hated him when this was published. It is so revealing. There is so much, not just beyond the sexual content, holds nothing back. The attitudes, the practices, the types of people, the characters. We just have a kaleidoscope of these characters in this small town, clearly modeled after the one that McMurtry grew up in, Archer City, I think. It just moves with this grace. It's unreal how perfectly written it is and structured. I didn't grow up in a small town, but I could really relate to how these characters felt who are on the cusp of adulthood. These characters who are just graduating high school and facing the future. What is life going to be? Like, especially in this type of environment, like, what does your life look like? McMurtry wrote a couple of sequels actually to this book, and I have almost finished Texasville, which is so weird. It's such a weird sequel because it's like following up King Lear with Hot Rod. Broad, goofy comedy with the same characters. So bizarre. But this book, I can't recommend it enough. If you love great portraits of sad, lonely characters, it is a sad book. Like, it's depressing. They're so hopeless, so many of them. They just have nothing. There's such a quiet, solitary, sad, suppressive life. I'm in love with this book. It is a perfect companion to the movie. The movie itself is perfect. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing how they were able to make the movie out of, Larry McMurtry had a huge hand in the script. The fact that it came out so perfectly is unreal. If you haven't seen the movie, watch it. Watch and read these in whatever order. I think they complement each other. I don't think you need to worry about reading one or watching one before the other. It's still shocking, I think. even now. Like, I mean, obviously this is an example of a super faithful adaptation, but, you know, some of the best ones like The Shining or Jurassic Park make huge changes, you know, that reinterpret the material completely. In fact, in Lindsay Ellis's Nebula original, Jurassic Park Turns 30, she explains the necessary and intricate process that was adapting Crichton's novel for the screen. Basically, that movie wouldn't have been a beloved classic if it was a one-to-one adaptation. That video is actually extremely good. I learned a lot. You should watch it. That, along with a ton of other exclusive content from your favorite creators, is available on Nebula. Nebula is the largest creator-owned streaming platform in the world. It's where all your favorite creators like Big Joel, H Bomber Guy, Hello Future Me, create exciting new content. Nebula is truly growing as a streaming service. You can watch brilliant video essays and 30-second shitposts from me. There's a ton of exciting original content being produced, from Jetlag to Abigail Thorne's Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend. To be honest, whenever I get a chance to chill and watch something, I'm usually pulling up Nebula instead of Netflix, just because I can find something way easier that's going to keep me entertained. If you sign up using my link at go.nebula.tv/mancarryingthing or use the link below, you can get Nebula 40% off, which is $36 a year or $3 a month. Wow. You can also get a monthly plan for $6 a month. But if you're a Nebula superfan, they're selling lifetime memberships for $300. No gimmicks, just Nebula for life. And for those of you who want to share everything Nebula has to offer with your family and friends, Nebula is now offering annual gift cards. That sounds like a really good Christmas gift, huh? Use the link gift.nebula.tv/mancarryingthing to give a year of Nebula to a friend for just $36. And that's Nebula for you, just good old stuff. Thank you everyone for your support. Thank you to our patrons for supporting us on our channel. Once again, I'm doing Game of Thrones reading vlogs up there, an unreal 2024. I want to thank everyone for sticking around. I can't believe that I've been doing YouTube this long. I just can't believe it. It's very strange. Thank you everyone, and I hope this was somewhat fun. Have a good one. Bye-bye.